Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. My name's Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and this is episode number 66, I believe. And we're going to be talking in this episode about common traits of successful EntrePastors. Les and I, my co-partner Les Hughes and the co-hosts of the show here, we believe that success leaves clues, and there are some very common similarities that are shared among those in our community and our tribe, if you will, that are doing really well and thriving as entrepreneurial pastors. And in this episode, you're going to hear myself and Les unpack just a short list of some of those common traits that we see shared among these different EntrePastors. And I can tell you, these people we have in mind are in different parts of the country. They're in different fields of work. Their ministry contexts are different. And yet there are still some underlying character traits that are commonly shared, and we believe it's why they have experienced the success that they have as EntrePastors. So without any further ado, let me cut to this interview that I did recently with myself and Les, where we unpack common traits of successful EntrePastors. Here we go. So this is episode number 66, and what we're going to talk about in our time together today, we're calling this the common traits of successful EntrePastors. Maybe I should have named it common traits of the uncommon EntrePastors.
I like it. It's a great topic. So I'm looking forward to digging in here.
Yeah. So really what we want to talk about in our time together is in a recent conversation, you and I were talking about, what are some of the things that you look at, even though we know people that are doing well in multiple different arenas, come from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, and yet there's some common traits that they share, the ones that are successful, the ones that you and I love pouring into, spending our time around, being poured into from them. And we've come up with a list. So far, we've got, what do we got? 5 things. We might add more as we talk, but we got 5 things that Les and I have identified are traits that are shared among successful EntrePastors. And again, obviously you could apply this beyond the world of EntrePastors, but since that's our tribe, you're our people, this is what we want to talk to. We want to speak to this. So let's go. You ready, Les, to run down this list and riff on this stuff for a bit?
I'm ready. And just to peel back the curtain a little bit more, it's no accident here, Jon, that the subjects that we're talking about are the things that we write about, the things that we have our content in our community about, we post about, we podcast about. There's a reason for that, because they're definitely, as they say, success leaves trails. And there are some common denominators here of people that we know very, very well. And that's why we're talking about these particular 5.
There you go. So get out your notebooks and kind of do a little self-assessment as you hear us run down this list, and just grade yourself. How are you doing in these areas of your life? So number 1, we see successful EntrePastors, successful entrepreneurs having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, right? So Les, tell me more about a growth mindset. What goes through your mind when you hear that term, having a growth mindset?
Well, a growth mindset is just an understanding, really having the self-awareness and having an understanding that we're not just a certain way, therefore we can or cannot do certain things. For example, just textbook example would be somebody that says, well, I'm just not a good test taker, or I'm just not good at math, or I'm just not good at public speaking. Something, so many of the things, in fact, I think most of the things that we do, Jon, are learned skills.
Yeah.
The problem is sometimes we compare ourselves with somebody that we perceive to be an expert or who have arrived at the mountain, so to speak. We kind of compare our chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. But the having a growth mindset is to know that, God made us where we can learn and grow and change if we really want to. And we're not just we're not just a certain way. No matter what. And there's a lot of studies that have been done about this very subject, and that a lot of the things that you might believe that you're one way or the other, we just tell ourselves some stories. We tell ourselves some narratives because we're afraid of trying it and failing.
Yeah.
And that's why we deal with this in our community, like number one, because if you don't get past this, as a man thinks within himself or thinks in his heart, so is he. If you don't get past this, you really are stuck.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about this is the word victim mentality. Someone with a fixed mindset is always the victim. Like you said, or I'm just not good at math, and the focus is poor me. I can't get out of this. This is what has happened to me. Life has happened to me. A growth mindset is not a victim. When I hear my kids speaking with the victim speak, I often call it Vinny the victim is speaking up. I don't know where I came up with Vinny, but I'm just like, oh, there's Vinny again, Vinny the victim. Vinny. And we work on that as with our kids around that subject. Like, don't be a victim, have a growth mindset. So there's some key areas I would challenge pastors to have a growth mindset. Certainly one that we deal a lot with in our community is having a growth mindset around money. We, as Christians, as leaders in the church, unfortunately, over the years, we've gotten some really jacked up ideas about money. We get really weird about something that God has not gotten weird about. God has said it's a tool. It's not to be loved. It's not to be placed on the throne of your life, but it's not wrong to have some either. It's not, you're not holy and righteous when you're broke and barely, scraping by. So get a growth mindset around money. Whatever work has to be done to get a healthy mindset around finances and the acclamation of wealth, like let's go for that and let's grow in that. Another one is what we believe about others, having a growth mindset when it comes to other people. Again, it's very easy to be looking for the worst in somebody, to be a victim of other people's decisions and choices, instead to believe the best about them until they give you a reason maybe not to believe the best about them. But the people that we hang around, Les, the people that we see succeeding have a very positive mindset when it comes to other people. They're not always looking to see who's out to get them, believing the worst about others. They're looking for the best and expecting the best in others. And amazingly, they often get the best from others because that's what they're looking for. I would also add one more thing to that, and that's they have a healthy growth mindset about the future. Man, sometimes when I talk to other Christians and leaders in the church, you would think that the future is the worst thing coming, just doom and gloom as they look out into the world and all the problems they see. And as God's people, as leaders in this kingdom, we ought to be some of the most positive about the future because we know who holds the future. And I know that's kind of cliche, but it's truly that the best days are in front of us. The best is truly yet to come. So a growth mindset covers a lot of areas like that.
Exactly. And a lot of this has to do with vision. So that's something that, and many of the pastors who are listening, other types of leaders, people with ministry background, you understand vision. And when you're casting vision, it's vision, it's seeing something. But a lot of times you're seeing something that's not quite visible to the physical eye yet, but you see it in your heart, you see it in your mind, in your goals, in your dreams, the desires of your heart. And so I can hear somebody saying, yeah, guys, but like, I really am not good with money. I really am not good with figures. I'm really not good, whatever that might be, fill in the blank. So there's ways to address all those. Let me tell you a way to be honest with yourself and not self-deceiving, but still have a growth mindset. Honesty is a good thing. Be honest about where you are right now. It's like if you're leading a ministry or a church, you can say, hey guys, hey folks, we're not here right now, but this is what God's placed on my heart. And this is who I believe we can really become. This is where I believe that we can go. And so it's not that you're telling yourself a story that's not true. It's just that you desire something different and something most of the time better. So a way to do that is to say, if we're going to be honest, you know what? In the past, I have struggled with blank, but I'm really working to better myself. And I believe that this is going to, it is already getting better because I'm getting some coaching. I'm getting some mentoring. I'm reading, I'm listening to some material that's going to help me, and I'm getting counsel to help me become better. So we might say, I may be currently struggling with this, but doggone it, it's really getting better and I'm going to a good place.
Yeah. Years ago, I had a mentor tell me that as a leader of a church or any organization, a leader always needs to be answering two questions. Where are we right now? And where are we going? So to that first piece, that's us. We're not saying that you are, living in some other reality, or that you're divorced from reality by, just being completely irrational and disconnected. It's okay to have an honest assessment of where I am right now. But that piece that you mentioned, Les, that vision of, but where am I going? And where I'm going is better than where I am right now in many ways. We're going to fix some of these things. We're going to address these things. We're going to grow. We're going to get better. So again, that growth mindset, man, I love hanging around people who have that, because they bring it out in me. And I don't like, the opposite is no fun. I'm drained by people that have a fixed mindset and just always the victim of someone else's choices and believe the worst about others. Little man can't get ahead. There's not enough of anything to go around. There's just, I distance myself from that thinking and that mentality. So, hey, if that's you, snap out of that. That's not going to serve you well, that kind of a mindset. So that's the first thing, a growth mindset. The second one that we've identified, and this is timely since we're coming right off of the Thanksgiving holiday here, but it's gratitude. And by the way, these aren't necessarily in any particular order, but gratitude. Les, why is gratitude such an important piece of the equation if we want to be successful as EntrePastors?
Well, not only if we want to be successful as EntrePastors, but if we want to be obedient followers of Christ, if we want to be obedient sons and daughters of God, this is a command. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. Amen. That's an objective fact. He really is good. Doesn't say he's good if you can see it all the time. It doesn't say it's good if you feel like he's good. This is an objective fact that God is a good God. Now, we don't have to be thankful for everything, but we must be thankful in everything. And that's not just a matter of verbal gymnastics or semantics. There really is some meaning behind that. Here's the thing that I think it's interesting, John. The scripture never indicates that we're to always feel grateful or feel as if we're thankful. It says give thanks. There's a big difference in those things. But I will guarantee you this, if you don't feel grateful for your life right now, or if there are some things in your life that take your attention that if you're honest, you're saying, you know what, I'm not really thankful for that. If you start thanking the Lord for other things, and even for that thing, that's a challenge. You know what, Father, I'm thankful right now that I'm struggling in name an area. Let's just say you're in a job that you want out of. I'm thankful for that employer right now that's really not treating me fairly, because God, I think you're teaching me some things through this. Yeah. I'm trusting in you through this. And what'll happen is your heart's going to change. This is one of the things that God's he's so wise, and he doesn't tell us necessarily to feel certain ways. He tells us the things that are actionable, and he knows if we'll be obedient, that the heart will follow. I heard years ago, somebody use an illustration that was a pole vaulter that couldn't get over a certain height. And so his coach said, hey, throw your heart over the bar and the rest of you will follow. And if you start giving thanks, you're going to find an amazing thing happens. And then you'll start feeling grateful after you've practiced gratitude. Now, you may not be able to control your feelings right away, but I'll tell you what, you can control what you say, what you give thanks over. Yeah. If you can control your speed, if you can speak, and even if you can't really, if you use sign language, you can sign thanks. I mean, I'm not trying to be silly, John. I'm being serious. I can say, Father, I'm thankful for I'll give you an idea. Several years ago, I had a heart attack, and it was painful and it was hard and it took a long time to recover. And I wish it hadn't have happened in some ways, like physically, but we don't even have time for me to talk about all the ways that God used that and talked and spoke to me. And even now through that experience. Yeah. So we can give thanks. And that's why he says, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good.
Yeah, I love that. When you were saying that earlier, that thought came to mind too, that often our feelings will follow our actions. We don't feel our way into obedience. We obey our way into the right kind of feelings, but so, yeah, gratitude is just huge, man. Like the people we hang around, the people that we see really thriving in life and ministry, they're grateful people. If you think about the opposite of gratitude, it's really a spirit of entitlement. We see that so often in our culture today. People think everybody owes them something. And man, when you have that entitlement, you're not grateful for anything. You think it's owed to you. And then when life doesn't line up for you the way you think it should, and people aren't lining up to give you what you deserve, you're just a grumpy, miserable person to be around. And so that doesn't go far certainly in ministry or in business, building a business. And it's interesting to me to see that the people who are intentional about being grateful and expressing gratitude in their life, it just seems that more good flows to them. By the way, there's scientific evidence out there. They've studied this, that people who express gratitude are physically healthier. They do better in life. So anyway, gratitude is huge, and it's something we can be intentional about. And it's a simple thing to just pay attention to all that I have to be grateful for. And it's a long list if we're honest about the many things God has blessed us with, even if we're not exactly where we are right now or where we desire to be right now. We still have much to be grateful for in that moment. Which, by the way, Les, I'm going to take these out of order. I'm looking at our list because this next one would be a good segue. Let's talk about generosity. Another common denominator that we see among successful people, and certainly in our tribe of EntrePastors, they are people who are generous with their time, certainly with their financial resources, with their platform and influence. I mean, you think about how many people have been generous with us, with their audiences and their platforms, and vice versa. I mean, I think we've modeled that well. I'm not going to pretend in some kind of false humility not to do that. We've been generous with many people, with our time, with our resources, with our audience and platform. And we just see that that generosity that flows there. So what would you add to that about being generous?
This is such a great subject. The thing about generosity that people sometimes miss is that many people believe that you need to get to a certain point with your resources or with your wealth, and then you can be generous.
Yeah.
Generosity has really nothing to do, or very, very little to do with what's in your bank account. It is a matter, like these other things, it's a matter of your heart. And again, you don't necessarily have to, not everybody is going to be a joyful giver, but this is another thing that if you can practice some discipline here and give, then a lot of times your heart will follow. And it is very, very much true. What Jesus said about where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And there's lots of illustrations to this, but when you are vested in something, when you give toward someone or something, man, part of your heart goes there, and you pay much more attention, and you got skin in the game then. And not only that, but you're just kind of paying it forward as well. And God blesses that. He just does. He blesses generosity because you've shown yourself to be a good steward. And again, there's lots of illustrations we could talk about with regard to that. But just know, if you've ever said to yourself or to someone else, man, I'd love to be more generous, and when I have more, I'll be more generous. Probably not. I mean, we've known so many people, Jon, that is true of. I mean, I'm seeing faces right now of people that have told me that, and it just doesn't end up being true. Yeah, no, it's just not true. But something, I know if somebody doesn't have much and they give what they can, then I've got a pretty good idea that person eventually is going to have more, because they've been faithful with a little. And Jesus said, you be faithful with a little, and I'll put you in charge over much. Yeah.
So good. So good. So be generous. That lie of when, then, when I have more, then I'll become generous. I'll be glad to give when I have it. That's not really true. If you're not generous now, you're not going to be generous with more. And it's amazing when you are generous now, stuff flows into our life, man. When we live open-handedly with our time, our treasure, our resources, our influence, it just seems that God brings more of that back to us. So that's a common denominator that we see in the people that we love to hang out with, that we see doing great things in the world. They're generous people. The next one, I love this one. They're learners. So number 4, another common trait of successful EntrePastors, they are learners. Les, there's a level of humility that comes along with being a student. Like to be a learner is to be humble, because to be a learner is to admit, I don't have all the answers. I don't know all there is to know. it was interesting in our EntrePastors mastermind this week. The last 2 weeks, we've been having a conversation about how do you establish yourself as an authority in your space, whatever that may be. And an interesting conversation came up that, one of our members was just mentioning that in a conversation he was having, someone outside of our community, this person kind of got offended by being asked the question, have you ever read this book, such and such, that came up a few times in the conversation. Have you read this? Have you read that? And the person was offended by that. And one of the things that came out of our conversation was, man, that says a whole lot more about the posture of that person than it does about the person asking the question, right? So, because one of our people was kind of saying, maybe I shouldn't be asking those questions of, have you read this book? Maybe it puts me in this place of, looking like I'm better than or smarter than or whatever. I'm like, man, that says way more about the posture of that non-student, that non-learner who's going to be offended because you asked a question and maybe exposed some lack of knowledge in their life, versus the opposite of someone with a learner mentality. They're going to receive that. They're going to be like, no, I've never read that book. Tell me about it. What's in there? So say more about that, Les. Like, how would you encourage someone to be a learner and to continually develop that muscle in their life of being a learner?
Well, it's more doable now than ever in history because there's just so much out there. I mean, I've got a mentor that says, there is no lack of knowledge in the land. Like, there's so much information out there. I also had someone speak into my life years ago that said, if you can read and don't, then you're really no different than somebody who can't.
That's good.
And just the fact that you live in a place where it's understood that we can read and we can learn. And even if you might have a learning disability, or there's some reason that you can't, or that it's not doable to read much, you can still listen now. There's resources to listen to. There's other modes of learning now, not just reading. But we have another friend that always says, leaders are readers.
Yeah.
And a good bit of the time, readers are leaders. You can go anywhere in the world. You can gain any kind of information that you need. The things that knowledge used to be limited by those who could go to a physical place like a library or a research center or something and physically get their hands on the information. We're living at a time that the world is opened up to us if we're willing to go and put in the time.
Absolutely. So, and that, by the way, I do about 80% of my reading through Audible, listening to audiobooks. It's interesting to me too, when I say that to people, how they almost like discount that. Oh, well, that's not reading a book. I'm like, how is it not reading a book? Like, why does this have to be hard to get the information, right? Like, why does it not count if I also was, on the treadmill or taking a walk or mowing the grass when I got that knowledge and learned? So anyway, I'm a huge believer in reading, also listening, whether it's listening to audiobooks or listening to podcasts. And I kid you not, Les, some people, kind of question me when I say this. Podcasting has changed my life. It really has, through the thousands of hours of podcasts that I have listened to from other people, the amazing content that I've consumed from other leaders and teachers in various walks of life, as well as the podcast content that I've created, the relationships that have come from that. But that all comes from a hunger to learn. It comes from a desire and I hope, a humility that says, I want to know more. I don't have all the answers. I'm going to go find the answers. I'm going to learn from other people who can teach me and show me. And by the way, that leads to another thing I would add to that, and that is to actually seek out those people in coaching or mentoring type relationships. Scripture says that there is safety in a multitude of counselors. And so again, the people we see really succeeding in life are surrounded by a multitude of counselors. And by the way, Les, they're willing to pay for it as well. Like, they're willing to make a financial investment, a time investment to be in the room in relationship with that coach or that mentor or those coaches, plural, whatever that may look like. So anything else, like anything you would add to that heading of being a learner?
Well, there's a lot to that, but here's the thing. No matter what level, we've talked about different levels. So whether it's an entry level type situation where you're just listening to a podcast and not really paying anything except the time that it takes to do it, or you're investing sometimes a significant amount into a coach or a mentor who's willing for you to have access to them a good bit more and ask specific questions, which you can't do by listening to somebody on a podcast. Think of it this way, or a book. Here's someone who quite possibly has spent a lifetime, at least years or decades, in gaining the knowledge that they have. And they're willing to sit down with you either virtually through a podcast or one-on-one, and they're willing to sit down with you and then just pour into you the things that it's taken them years or decades to learn. It's foolish not to tap into some of that.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And one thing too, by the way, just for any pastor listening to this that desires to be paid to speak into the lives of other people, through some kind of coaching, counseling, consulting, for you to be in that position and be unwilling to make that investment into your own life is just super hypocritical. I want to point that out. And I'm not being ugly when I say that. I'm being truthful. I want you to think about that. If you desire to, and we meet a lot of people in our community who want to be coaches, nothing wrong with that. We think pastors are wired very naturally and gifted naturally to be coaches. But if you're desiring to be a coach who's unwilling to make an investment into your own coaching, it's a huge contradiction to basically say, I see value in you hiring me as a coach. I don't see enough value in coaching for me to invest in that for myself. So we would highly recommend everybody has some kind of formal coaching relationship if they're really on this path of pursuing success and learning at a high level. So it's been a game changer for us. Well, the last thing that we've got on our list here is something we see among these successful EntrePastors is a disciplined lifestyle. They're disciplined people. And again, that discipline shows up in multiple arenas in their life. I'll start off with this one, Les, because this has been a game changer for me over the years. I've really learned to value and have a system around my morning routine. Like I try to win the day by first thing in the morning, having a pretty consistent rhythm to how I start my day. And I don't start it with a bunch of emails and social media and TV on. Like I started very intentionally getting my mind right, letting God speak into my life through scripture, through some time in thinking and just being quiet and still reading. I'm always reading something in those early morning hours, journaling. Like there's, some exercise usually is a part of that, getting out and taking a walk or doing something physical. Like there's a growth that has come to my life through that morning routine. And it's taken some discipline to get there, but man, I can't imagine living life without it. What say you to that? What other areas do we see people really exercising discipline in their lives?
Well, that morning routine is huge. I'll amen you on that. I mean, even for our working, our partnership, man, we do respect one another's mornings, and there's plenty of times that we could use that early time to get some things done. But I appreciate the fact that we both understand the importance of that and stick to it. So I would say, lean into that. If you don't have one, really focus on that consistency. Yep. And then being a good manager of your own time and your own schedule. I'm thinking right now about somebody that I really respect a lot when it comes to this, Jon, and that is Marianne Renner. And I've heard Marianne's a very, very productive, but she's very generous with her time. But if I were to call Marianne, and we're pretty good friends and you are as well, and if we were to say, hey, let's block out a few minutes on, let's just pick a day, Friday, or let's look at next week. She almost automatically because she's so disciplined and structured about her week that she could almost always knows that those spots are taken, even if they're taken for a cup of coffee with a good friend or margin time. We need margin time, anything. Anyway, I respect her for that.
Right.
If something's important enough to get on the schedule, I mean, if something's that important, we ought to respect it enough and respect ourselves and those around us. In our case, our families, and schedule even time for them. Time, like you said, that morning routine, that's scheduled time with God every day. It's scheduled time with your own thoughts every day. So pay as much respect to the Lord and to yourself for great reasons than you would somebody that would call, and just want an appointment with you.
Yeah, and this is a huge thing with pastors who are kind of coming to us wanting to get going down this road is just, this idea of I'm already overworked in my pastoral role. Now you're wanting me to launch a business and thrive out in the marketplace. And this is a huge area that we work with pastors in, is let's learn how to really manage the time. We all have 24 hours in a day. Successful people don't get more hours in the day. They've learned how to really make those hours count and they have margin. They seem to be operating from a life of rest, not this place of hectic, chaotic rush all the time. It's a life of rest, and there's margin, but they get stuff done, man, because they make their time count. It's also interesting, the people we hang out with, we don't have lots of conversations around what season of a TV show you've binged watched in the last, 24 hours. And it's amazing to me how people used to watch a show. Now we talk about what season you just completed on Netflix or Hulu or any of these things. Nothing wrong with watching TV. I'm not here to cast judgment on that, but I just find it interesting. People that we're talking about don't seem to have a lot of time in their life for mindless television and crime shows and all the stuff. They're busy building a life on purpose, and they're making their days count versus just kind of passively floating through the day. So we see that discipline, and that's not a bad word. It's a good word. It's producing really positive results in their lives. So Les, I'll give you the last word if you want to wrap up here.
Well, that's a great word. And I would just say what you said about everybody having the same amount of hours. You think about the most productive people in your life, the most productive people in the world, the people that you really admire being difference makers. They all had the same amount of time. It's just that they were disciplined, and it's about what you say, not just about what you say yes to, but it's about what you say no to, or not now, or not this season, or not this year, or not ever. And that sounds a little bit cruel, but it's not. It's just being, very, very intentional about the fact that we are there aren't some resources in the world may not be limited, but that one really is.
Yep.
Time really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope this has been a beneficial conversation to you. And again, there's probably other things we could certainly add to that list, but this is a good list to get us started. I would just challenge you with the question again that we hit you with at the beginning. As you hear us unpack this list, how are you doing in those key areas of your life? How can you level up? How can you improve? And, what can we do to be a part of that growth journey for you? We'd love to come alongside you and help you out in any way that we can. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.